a lot of what I say has to do with the idea that I put in the introduction of my book, which is, what do we want? What do we want? Um, and then, if we want life, if we want freedom, how do we actually get there? Because there are so many ideas and so many visions for how we have life, how we have spiritual awakening, freedom, and then in a worldly sense, how we have justice, peace, end war, end poverty, and things like this. And so it's a question of, first of all, what we want. Do we know what we want? And then the question of, how do we actually get there? And I am certain that whether or not someone follows my vision or follows something completely different, that these essential truths of relationship, which I believe all moral and ethical truths are ultimately truths of relationship, of love. These truths of relationship will be there, and ultimately they are about us expanding in intimacy with existence, expanding our experience, ourselves in intimacy and equality. And so this reflects in our earthly human experience. So each one of us, as we look at our future and our path in life, and the actions we'll take and the beliefs that we will develop, and the sense of identity, the self-identity that we will develop, we have to ask ourselves sincerely, and this is where true knowledge begins with ourselves, and a inward gaze is to become honest with our own self, to ask ourselves sincerely, what do we really want? How do we get there? It's okay to admit that we want power, that we want freedom, that we want pleasure, that we want life in all of its different forms. Obviously, we do want life, and there's no problem being honest about our desire for life and the many different experiences that life holds as human beings and as souls. So there's no problem being honest that we want life and power and pleasure and freedom to win. It's fine to admit that we want to win, to get what we want. Just to be honest about everything we feel, everything we desire at all levels. And that's just recognizing where each desire and belief comes from. And then putting everything in its place in order to get where we want to go and to truly gain what we desire. So you start from just that honesty, and then we expand our vision of what we are, and we being honest about all the desires, not labeling them negative or positive, but just seeing everything that's there. We then expand our self-identity to include the spirit. And doing so, we include all others in our sense of what life is. And then we come to that point where we understand relationship is the door to fulfillment. But looking at this, again, the spiritual the spiritual framework and spiritual vision applies to this life and world. And when we look at this framework of relationship, it does become clear what attitudes and beliefs in culture and in the world are connected to spiritual reality and which are not. And when we look at relationship, when we look at equality, but also true radical freedom and self-expression, it's clear that oppressive values and values that seek to control and to limit are not the values of spirit, because for humanity to be a spiritual reality, for this human experience to be filled by the deepest spiritual experience, people have to be free to express themselves, to experience themselves both honestly and radically, however they choose. And as I constantly say, because it is a vital truth, the only limit is that of destruction, that we cannot destroy others, and we can't, or we certainly should not destroy ourselves. There, I'm starting to wake up now. And so, as we apply a spiritual framework to our human experience and our desire, our human quest for freedom, we can see that it's about knowing ourselves, setting ourselves free of guilt and fear, and just having the awareness that allows us to experience and express ourselves without hurting others. Setting ourselves free, being honest about ourselves, and then setting others free, seeing others as equal, wanting them as they are, wanting to relate to them as they are, being interested in that which is different, and not. So, okay, that sounds like I'm putting forth a liberal view of reality, but it's not actually either liberal or conservative in the shallow ego sense, because as we do that, and we set people honestly and radically free, just as we set ourselves free, we move past the desire to control that which we see as wrong or opposed to us. Again, that there's that one condition where we ask each other for freedom, and we offer each other the freedom we want for ourselves. But we don't try to force a liberal view on others. There's this umbrella, as I say, this overall umbrella of liberty, where everyone has the right to their journey and to their choice of belief and expression. Under that umbrella, there can be an incredible variety of opinions and beliefs, and some of which may seem bigoted or limited or ignorant, and we can't try to force those beliefs to go away. And that's where any side in these, what I would call culture wars, these wars of belief, any side that is trying to eliminate voices of opposition, any side that's trying to force the world or others to see things in the same way, is no longer a truly liberal or liberating view or vision. And that's where it becomes complicated, because the ego is always trying to find that excuse to control rather than to liberate. And no matter what side we're looking at, in terms of just the worldly struggle for justice or freedom, or for domination, we are human beings, and the ego is always trying to find an excuse to eliminate opposition and to control. And in these cases, what I repeat is that the cure is worse than the disease. In other words, the cure of spreading an accepting and tolerant vision becomes twisted in the sense that it seeks to control all views and bring them by force into alignment with its own views. And anything that does that is no longer truly tolerant or liberal. It's controlling, and it's about ego. And we can see that control, first of all, understanding the deepest patterns of spirituality. We understand that control, that desire for control is of the ego. When it moves past the essential non-destruction, which is the shape of relationship, and seeks to control people and thought in the details, then it's about ego. And you can see that at play on all sides. People take offense so quickly. They have no tolerance for what they see as intolerant. They have no tolerance for what they see as bigoted or what they see as rude or sexist or racist. Now, I'm not saying sexism and racism are good. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the deeper cure to humanity's ills is a cure that creates a foundation of justice and freedom, which means people will not be destroyed, not be oppressed in extreme poverty and disenfranchised by the systems of culture. But when that occurs, as that occurs, in our awakening, we will not be nitpicking every little thing that doesn't fit into our view, every little thing that might be edgy or might cross those lines. Because that is not the way of soul. That is not the way of spirit. Spirit is not afraid of little rudeness or impropriety or ignorance or bigotry. Ego is afraid, but spirit is seeking to set all people free to be on their journey. And when I write about this, I talk about how there's two different visions here. And one is the negative vision of thou shalt not do, and one is the positive vision of what we should do as spiritual beings. And the thou shalt not is for the ego. It's sort of this just basic guideline to tame the ego and to stop the destruction of one another, to stop killing, to stop oppressing, to stop enslaving. And that's the bottom line as we set each other free. The thou shall, the positive, is the message for the soul. But that's not a demand. The thou shalt not is a demand. We have to stop destroying each other and enslaving each other. But the thou shall, the positive, the message of the soul, that's not a demand. It's not. We choose to love. We choose to awaken. And where awakening tries to force itself, where we want to force spiritual consciousness upon another, we are no longer spiritually conscious. We are twisting spiritual vision, allowing the ego to take control and twist it into something which is oppressive. Spirit sets us free. And to get back to my original question, what do we want and how do we get there? When we want true liberation, there's a lot of letting go that takes place. You can't make someone else awaken. You can awaken your own soul. Embody spirit in your own life. And move in the direction of life. Being more grounded, more present, and more embodied soulfully in this world, in this life. You will enjoy it more. You will have more peace and happiness in a deeper sense. I don't mean shallow little happiness, although that's fine. I mean you'll be more deeply joyous with the experience of being. But you will also have your eyes moving through this world into eternity and infinity. That's where we can make happen if we choose. We have that choice to awaken. But we can't force that on anyone else. The spiritual journey, in that sense, can be a lonely one, but I think every truly spiritual individual will connect with those who recognize their message. But in the end, the one thing we do control is our experience and our choice as a soul to awaken. And then in offering a vision to others, it has to be with an open hand. We can't begin to nitpick and control, because again, that's an ego. And like I was saying, we in this culture where we see liberal values, good values, beginning to shift humanity in a positive direction of acceptance and tolerance, we then see that insidious thing coming through of control and censorship. You know, I mean, someone hears the word fuck and they think it's the worst thing in the world. Well, you know, it's not. The soul isn't afraid of the word fuck. The soul isn't afraid of rudeness or humor that crosses lines, you know. And the ego just is looking for these reasons to be offended, these reasons to control, even in the name of liberation, even in the name of liberal values. The ego's always looking for reasons to censor and control, and to limit, whereas the soul is always looking for ways to expand our experience, human experience, all experience. And so we can recognize this. And this can offer us the clear line through what sometimes seems bewilderingly complex when it comes to the struggle for worldly freedom, and voices crying out for justice that then so quickly twist the message and the vision of justice towards something that is controlling and censoring and limiting, or seeking to eliminate opposition. We can see what true liberty and liberal visions are, and where ego is at work. And this is very important, because spiritual awakening does not take place in some human vacuum, or some spiritual vacuum in the sense that we're just a soul awakening in a void. Our human experience is part of it. Our world, our culture, our egos, our minds, everything is part of it. There's that sort of cliche by now, but there's that saying, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Well, I would say we are spiritual beings, consciousness, having a spiritual experience. And this human life and experience is spiritual. What is matter but energy? What is energy but consciousness? And what is consciousness but spirit? It's all spirit at levels of consciousness or ignorance. And this life and this world and the desires of the human being and all of it is part of this journey of a soul, a consciousness awakening into infinity. And so it's all important. Of course, like I said, a lot of it's about letting go. It's not trying to force awakening on others or awakening on history or on the world. It's just, that's not possible. And having peace in your heart, in our hearts, as we make our choice to be truly spiritual and liberated, and while being embodied and present in this world, also having that vision that expands far beyond into eternity, into infinity. That's the choice we have. That's the freedom. And once again, to return to my original question, what do we want? We want life, we want freedom, we want power, we want love, we want intimacy with all things forever. And how do we get that? we make a choice. We make a choice ourselves, alone, but connected to all life. We make a choice ourselves that that's the direction we're going in, toward liberty, toward acceptance, toward life. And we let go. We let go, we find peace with all things, with all things. And letting go, having peace, we then engage, we interact, we love, we lose, we win, we live. Life becomes imbued with a power and a possibility that wasn't there before, and that's the irony. I've written about this, how a atheistic, shallow argument against religion is that it's about looking ahead, afterlife, and it takes away the joy of this world. But actually, that's false religion, which is all about what comes after and diminishing this life. But true spirituality not just gives us a vision of what lies ahead and beyond, but it imbues us with a joy and a peace that allows us to be present and alive and in love here in this world. That's the beauty of it. What do we want? We want life. How do we get life? We make a choice. We say yes to our souls. And we move on from there.